Hello, all of you podcast listeners. Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Wire podcast. I'm your host, Fritz Nelson, and I'm joined by Kendall Fisher, producer and host of the Grow Wire Show.
Hello.
Hey, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Why?
I was just wondering, just making sure you're okay.
Do I not look great?
No, you look fine. You look fabulous.
I have my hair and face on for a podcast recording today, definitely. It was one of those mornings where I did an early Pilates class, so I didn't really have the energy after that to wash my hair. So I haven't washed my hair in 5 days.
Have you ever used that dry shampoo?
That's all I use.
Yeah. Guys don't use that, I imagine.
I don't think. Maybe it gives body.
Okay, maybe I'll try it. You do have your leopard pants on today, too.
I have my leopard pants on, and today I'm wearing a scrunchie for the first time. You might have not noticed, but I'm wearing a scrunchie.
All right, well, we're going to move on to this episode of the Grow Wire podcast, which features Amanda Lannert. She's the CEO of Jellyvision. What a great idea. Jellyvision is a company that's dedicated to helping people make smart decisions about their health, their benefits, and finances. And they do it by breaking down the stressful topics with clarity and humanity, and most importantly, humor. Jellyvision makes videos and interactive web pages, but its service is best known for conversations, online experiences that simulate a conversation with a real person that asks questions, remembers answers, and offers personalized guidance with a bit of personality. Sounds a bit like the perfect date, right? They call this Alex. Alex has been deemed the most helpful employee decision platform on the planet. It's not artificial intelligence. Rather, it's interactive conversation interface. It feels like a real person is just behind the machine.
You know, what's funny is before we did this podcast, I think I told you, Fritz, at my previous company, which was Comcast NBC Universal. I worked for E-News there, and I used Alex.
Did you like it?
I thought it was so helpful. It really is like talking to a real person, A. B, I had all, you literally fill in information about you, and Alex answers based upon that information. It's really, really, really innovative, and it just was super helpful for me, truly.
It sounds like a great way to make your benefits decisions and all your financial decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we're going to learn all about how Jellyvision came up with this idea for Alex, how it executed on the idea, and the journey the company traveled to make it successful. All that coming up next.
You're listening to the Grow Wire podcast, a place where you will learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Fritz Nelson, the editor-in-chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your journey of growth.
Since we recorded this episode with a Chicago-based company, it only makes sense to include a word from our sponsors over at The Second City, also in Chicago. Here's a little business insight that's almost too good to be true. Learning works best when you're laughing. Second City Works, the B2B side of comedy mecca, The Second City, unleashes the improv methods pioneered on their world-famous stages to help companies and individuals improve their performance. The professional development programs unlock better ways to communicate, collaborate, and innovate, all while laughing till you learn. Visit secondcityworks.com to find out more.
Oh, and Fritz, you forgot. We also have a podcast episode featuring Second City exec Kelly Lannert. It's filled with so much wonderful insight on how we can all use improv and use that idea of yes and even better, my favorite, thank you because in our day-to-day lives. So go check that out. Our podcast with Kelly Lannert is out now.
We also want to make sure you head over to our website, growwire.com, for another exciting entrepreneurial journey featured in the latest episode of the Grow Wire Show with Mountain Bikes Direct. And Kendall, you were involved in that. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, we We're on the Gold Coast in Australia filming this. MTB Direct is Australia's largest retailer for mountain bikes parts, clothing, and accessories. We sat down with husband and wife co-founders Michael and Jen Giel about their true entrepreneurial journey in getting the company off the ground after nearly going under. Find out how they changed their business model to better suit their customers and eventually grew into Australia's #1 resource for mountain bikes parts and accessories. You may also catch me eating bleep while attempting to mountain bike.
Did you get hurt?
I got a scab.
A little owie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But not too bad. No broken bones.
No broken bones.
Okay,
but
good.
I did curse quite a bit in that episode from falling. Anywho, you can watch the 3-part series now on growwire.com.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for joining us.
So happy to be here.
So I want to know, you're the CEO of Jellyvision. I thought at first Jellyvision was just a television for Jellystone. I might be dating myself by saying that. Yogi Berra? Okay. Anyone? No. All right. But can you explain what Jellyvision is?
Jellyvision, the name, or Jellyvision, the company?
The
'Cause I can
company.
go either way.
We'll go back to the name for a minute. But
So Jellyvision, the company, is a former gaming company, now HR tech company. We make software for large employers to help their employees choose and use their health insurance benefits. And I know it's a totally linear, transition from gaming company to benefits company, but where there's a will, there's a way.
so wait, what the gaming part of it? When did that start?
So the gaming company started really in 1996, 97, and we created virtual game show hosts for games like You Don't Know Jack and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. This idea of a very strong host persona who gets to know the audience and takes them through a bunch of, basically trivia content.
Gotcha. So this was based on actual games that existed, and you're going to create the virtual versions of those.
That's right.
And I don't like to use the word pivot too much, but that was a major pivot into B2B, HR kind of software. What happened?
Well, we made our games, and we were one of the first companies to ever create a game on a CD-ROM that became a TV show, rather than having a TV show that became a CD-ROM. So You Don't Know Jack was a kind of unusual success. We were freakishly lucky back in the day. But what happened, our delivery mechanism were again, these things called CD-ROMs, where you would put data on a disk and put the disk into a computer. And when those died, largely the business for gaming died. Games were moving online. Nobody was making money. It was a big console transition year. So when we realized that the entire mechanics of how games were being delivered and monetized was changing, and it was going to be sort of a drought period, we rebooted the company and said, rather than trying to make it by hanging on to our fingernails, get back to the company was really about, which is reaching through the screen and teaching learners one-on-one. We said, how can we create not virtual game show hosts in a B2C gaming space, but virtual advisors in a B2B enterprise space? So the thesis was, we used to make you laugh, but now we're going to go to where there's furrowed brow, where people are trying to do something complicated and boring, but important financially, and we will talk you through it. So instead of using our powers for entertainment, we were going to use our powers for good.
So what are some of those things that people furrow their brows about?
Well, back in the day when we were trying to figure out how to sell to big companies, how to not just entertain, but persuade, how to really build out a tool system that allowed us to do incredibly complex Boolean logic-based experiences, we helped people buy software for Autodesk and Salesforce and IBM. We helped Rush University diagnose sleep disorders. We made a talking car for BMW. We did all kinds of things where we helped people say, I need to buy CAD software. And instead of saying I have to go become an expert on CAD software, we would sort of simulate the experience you'd have with a great salesperson or advisor who would get to know you. What are your needs? What are your requirements? Based on what you're actually trying to do, this off-the-shelf software is the best one for you. And let me tell you why and how it works based on what I've learned. We would sort of simulate that experience online. And that was all sort of learning how to craft and learning how to sell to big companies. And ultimately we landed in health insurance. and with a product called Alex. Alex is not the first time we tried to productize and scale what we do. It's just the first time it worked.
So let's go back to those early days. So like when we hear about a company that has been successful, it's always easy to gloss over all the tough times, maybe some of the obstacles and so forth. What were some of those early days like of trying things, having them not work, having to think of the next thing? What do you remember most about those days?
Well, let's go back to the tough times. Like really, at the core of the genesis of the Jellyvision story is abject failure. We shut down the gaming company. I wrote a severance letter from myself to myself, which is a really unique experience. Like
it's not. Business, did it go? It's not you. It's us. It's like, not you. It's
hey,
me.
Amanda, girl. How you doing? Our time has come to an end. Love ya, Amanda. I joke about it now, but as much as it sucks to lay yourself off, it sucked more to lay off 70 people who are incredibly talented and hardworking. We just couldn't get the industry to align with a way to make money. So it's not like, oh, it wasn't working in a benign way, like it failed. We were sort of proactive enough about it and saw the writing on the wall early enough that we gave everybody severance and were able to, in fact, reserve a small pool of cash and a small team of people to move them into the new co. So I think we had a few things going for us. One, we had perspective and grit. We had a tremendous sense of gratitude, because out of the ashes rises the phoenix. And I think we had an idea of taking nothing for granted, which made us a little bit bolder. Now, make no mistake, our founder pulled off a miracle. He went out and he raised a Series A, which was technically a C, but we called it a Series A. In late 2001, like post 9/11, he managed to raise $1.6 million to go from virtual game show hosts to virtual advisors. So I rejoined the company. New lease on life, new financing, new mission. And then we proceed to spend the better part of a decade, 7.5 years, going sideways. Never getting traction, but managing to just not run out of money, despite a few more near-death experiences. It's actually shockingly hard to do, to just stay alive but unsuccessful for that long. We managed to do that too. So what were the stories there? I think we learned that there are two types of VCs. They're venture capitalists and they're vested customers. So we kept re-raising, kept financing the business by getting really innovative partners who loved what we do to write big checks that will allow us to do some R&D, to build new capabilities, to build out a tool set, and to sort of, create more time to live to see another day until we could ultimately find something that we could own from an IP perspective that we could productize and really scale in a repeatable way.
That moving sideways and near-death experiences, that had to have been frustrating.
Well, I think if you had said in hindsight, hey, are you ready to sign up for a 7.5 run of futility? Everyone would say no. But it was always the belief that what we were working on right now is going to pop. It really was. There was this sense of optimism. Our work was always innovative. And you hear it a lot, but it's almost like sometimes it was just too early. Yeah. We didn't have a critical mass of users online. There wasn't broadband web. I mean, 2002 we're talking, there wasn't fully penetrated domestic broadband web. So a lot of the things we did, we could see it coming to life in this incredibly compelling and innovative way, but then the market didn't materialize in incredibly compelling ways and made growth a little bit more difficult. So we reboot and try something new again and again and again. How do
you keep employees, at each stage of this coming back for, okay, no, it's going to work this time. We've got a great idea.
So always start with the why. What are we trying to accomplish? And what did we learn from the last failure? And be like, it didn't work, and here's why. And here's how we're not going to repeat the same mistake. We had a culture of incredibly talented, kind people. It's always been a little bit of the glue. When the business doesn't go so well, you're so enamored with your colleagues at Jellyvision. They're such talented, amazing people that it kind of gets you through a gloomy day. And then you could see that what we were working on, you could feel it, that it was cool. It just wasn't marketable yet. So you always felt a sense of like, we're leaving a legacy of stuff that is better than what came before it. Eventually it'll pop. You felt it.
So when was like that critical moment when it did finally take and you're like, okay, we really got it this time?
It was absolutely with Alex. And one of the things that happened, it wasn't just that we got to market. It's one of our first customers was Comcast. So it was a very, very large customer who we are WD-40 and duct taping to get to market. And just so many employees of Comcast were trusting us. We get through it, and not only does it go well and that employees understood and appreciated their benefits, but Comcast was an amazing partner because they helped us understand the actual ROI. It's like, it's great that your software helps people understand benefits. And I'll give you sort of a framing about benefits, but it also saved everybody a bunch of money. It changed behavior, which was exciting. So the world of benefits, think about it like this. Ford spends more money per car on health insurance than it does steel. And yet 1 in 4 of their employees would rather clean a toilet than think about benefits, which is really problematic because there's maybe $2,000 to $3,000 worth of difference out of pocket in terms of the choices that are made available to employees. Meaningful differences, but none of the normal buying cues like most expensive means best. No, it doesn't, not necessarily with benefits. So it takes math. It takes a willingness to deal with really complex actuarial sounding terms. You have to think about your mortality, your family's mortality. It's really a pretty terrible experience, which is just why the world was waiting for a gaming company to leap in and try to sort of thread the needle of, if you can't learn if you're not paying attention. And so we really brought sort of the gamification techniques to get people to pay attention, to lean in so they could learn, and we could help them make better decisions.
Okay, we're going to dive into that, but I have one other question about those early moments of success. And, you hear about this all the time from companies. I was just listening to the founder of Peloton talk about, leading up to the launch, how they literally, bikes were coming in and they were the wrong size, and the tablets they weren't tight enough, so when you were pedaling, they would wobble. But they were literally raising money, trying to sell these things. And you talk about duct tape and WD-40. I mean, that's literally what they were doing up to launch. And I wonder how many startups are doing that until they have, their first few big customers and their first big success.
So we now have, I date myself by calling it middleware, but we now have configuration tools that are years old and are run by many, many people to make sure that we can turn knobs and configure our product versus customize it. The first version of it that we went to market with was an Excel spreadsheet. We used an Excel spreadsheet that we sort of scraped to configure our product. So it really is amazing how much more infrastructure and support and stability and scalability and all those wonderful things that sort of, when you can invest in it, when you can afford to make these investments, you can. But I think the key thing is that from a user perspective, the experience was always great. So the way we got there, the way we built the products was pretty labor intensive and not, turnkey configuration. But for the user, they were like, I now understand what you're saying. This is a seamless experience. Like, what mattered most was always the best it could be. And then figuring out how to do things efficiently, how to have QA be more automated. Those are sort of the luxuries of success.
Gotcha.
Which American company started with a guy in a garage, was featured on Shark Tank, and now has over 1 million customers? Hint, they're reducing crime in neighborhoods everywhere. Here's Ring Video Doorbell founder Jamie Siminoff with his secret to success.
It's true. In just a few years, we've had huge growth. We've hired hundreds of people, expanded our warehouse, and we're shipping millions of units a year, all while making sure our customers are happy. I've had lots of things to worry about, but I never worry about our finance and accounting because we use NetSuite from Oracle. From the beginning, NetSuite let me see what's going on with my business in real time, from revenues to expenses, customers and orders, even HR. I run my business from a dashboard right on my phone. NetSuite has been my business management system from 10 to a team of over 1,000, and NetSuite will be my choice as we continue to innovate and grow.
Go to netsuite.com/ring to see how Jamie scaled his business. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/ring for your free guide and the story of a great American company. netsuite.com/ring.
So let's talk about Alex a little bit. You talked about Alex as a virtual advisor. So walk me through. I'm sitting there as an employee having to make my, 401k choices. I've got all these different investment options. It gives, I'm always given like a little advice. This is aggressive. This is conservative. But I'm not an investor, so I'm just trying to pick something that, keeps me sane. If I'm younger, I might want this. If I'm older, I might want that. How does Alex come in and help me with that?
So first of all, we make it not scary. There is no other industry on the planet where you can take a feature, a product, name it based on its worst feature and expect it to be successful. But we literally have a product called the high deductible plan. It's not called the low premium plan. It's called the high deductible plan because nobody cares. You're stuck with it. You got to deal with it anyway. So just everything is terribly named, really, really scary. And we started to sit down and say, when people are trying to make decisions and they feel stuck, what do they do? And so they would call their sister or uncle or somebody who works in benefits. And we really tried to understand what would they say. And the questions people asked when they wanted help wasn't, benefits, tell me what I need. They would say, me, tell me what I need. And we said, how can we start to simulate that conversation with that person who knows you, knows what's important to you, knows your life, and then says, based on what's actually going down with your family, this is the plan that's going to be cheapest for you on an annualized out-of-pocket basis. Here's the math. Now, do you want to play around with some scenarios? And that's exactly the thread we started with. Because we didn't know people, we didn't have, we're not your uncle. We would ask questions. Tell me about your prescriptions. Tell me about how often you think you're going to go to the doctor. Tell me about, in really conversational ways, we get an appetite for risk to figure out if people could front a deductible, be able to have a lower premium for a higher deductible. Get to know people, what's important to them. And then run calculations based on the actual plans your employer makes available to you. Which one is going to be cheapest for you, and then explain how it works so you have confidence about all these weird terms like deductible and copay and premium and coinsurance, just to make sure people could understand. So ultimately, what we sell is math, right? We're just selling mathematical projections so people understand the costs and the variances of plans. But we do it in a way that is entertaining and confidence building and trustworthy, because we have absolutely no incentives for you to do anything other than understand.
So how do you have to program in all these scenarios, and there could be infinite number of scenarios.
Actually, they're finite, right?
Well, sure.
They're finite per employer. The employer makes available a certain number of plans.
The plans, but not my own personal
correct
employee human experience.
Yes.
If I have 4 kids or 2 kids, or I have a domestic partner, but we're not married, and they have, it all kind of, there's so many different scenarios for the individual. How do you plan for that?
So ultimately, when you look at how health insurance works, you're able to mitigate some of the complexity, because whether you're getting a strep throat culture or you're getting checked out for tendinitis, they're not as different as you would think those things are from an overall cost calculation perspective. So we use a tremendous amount of claims data, really local market specific claims data, to be able to help understand, based on typical procedures, based on what you think your family is going to need, whether you need a couple of trips to the ER for your kids, how the plans are going to work in a way that really does give a lot of certainty and can show you that there's some pretty big variances on an annualized out-of-pocket basis.
How localized do you get?
Man, we just purchased a whole new trove, like down. It's not geolocated based on your phone's GPS, but down to regular city demos.
Right. So part of getting better is having more and more data, I imagine. So that's a challenge.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is what we want to be able to know about you and remember about you in the face of HIPAA, real serious regulations about privacy, and also in the face of the government not understanding privacy well enough to be able to write protocols that if you just meet these protocols, if you just follow these best practices and these rules, you'll be able to actually retain more data and use more data to help people actually have a better health experience. We're not there yet. And so there's a lot of hesitation because best practices and ways to keep people safe aren't fully understood.
So when I want to dive into Alexa, but just to understand the HIPAA part of it, if I'm at my corporation and I am using Alex and I'm answering the questions, some of them very private health related questions, how and where is that data stored, and how are HIPAA regulations enforced?
So this is the craziest thing. We have this completely intimate feeling conversation. We know all about your projected needs. We know about your financial situation. We know about how you're saving for retirement, but we don't know your name. We don't know your email address. We don't know, down to IP address. We don't save any identifiable information. We send an email that is encoded with what we just talked about, but that email address is not stored. Once the browser's closed, it's gone. So we navigate security by not needing to store PHI ever at all. If we're integrated into a bin admin, they do an identity redacted URL, pass us those parameters so we know about you without knowing who you are. So it's totally de-identified. And that's the way we can have these really deep, meaningful, and safe digital conversations.
But if I come back, it has no memory of me for the next interaction.
No, we send an email that's encoded with everything we just talked about. There's return awareness. We just don't know your name is Fritz.
I see.
You're just a data string to us. So we can't, no one can hack and get back to Fritz because Fritz doesn't exist as far as Jellyvision is concerned.
And I'm not as familiar with HIPAA regulations, but that's HIPAA compliant. All the things you just said.
Yeah.
So Alex then, is Alex man or woman?
It's a guy.
It's a guy. Will that change? Can that change?
So we have multiple products now. We have multiple conversations that take people through things like leave of absence and other things in the HR space that help people who are navigating life's tough stuff through their employer. Where sometimes the voice happens to be cast. We cast a female voice. We go for a gestalt, not a gender. You need to be authoritative enough to be trustworthy, but friendly enough to not be intimidating. And so we never go into something saying it's going to be a male or female. We are always going for a tone and a voice actor who can record hundreds of thousands of audio prompts and make it feel like they were spoken in a single line when in fact they maybe have recorded years apart. And it's a specific kind of talent and vibe that we go for more than a gender. So we are agnostic to gender. We are not a company that says like Alex has to be a guy. We chose the name because it was gender neutral, and we will always cast the best talent to tell the story that we need to tell.
And so you mentioned the entertainment aspect and humor. Is that part of Alex? How does that play out?
So remember, it's the bait. It's the bait to get people to give us attention. It's the bait to get people to maintain attention. There are other ways to do it. We just happen to like humor quite a bit. The fact is people cannot learn and be stressed at the same time. Your stress levels reduce your capacity to learn. And so we use humor to de-stress so that people have a better capacity to take in the information, actually retain it, and make good decisions.
So this is not artificial intelligence. This is pre-programmed, you said hundreds of thousands of pre-programmed voice-acted simulations.
Correct. We are doing R&D right now, like whether can we simulate a voice instead of actually recording a voice. It's just not seamless enough yet, but we're very interested. When we think about the future of Alex, we ask not just how can a computer talk to you, but how well can a computer listen and intuit? And we want to say, like, is there hesitation in response? Can we get smarter and smarter about what hesitation and response might be? Are there other cues? If you think about how, the power of communication actually works, something like 10% of your power in communication is actually in the words that you use. 30% is in the tone of your voice, and 60% is in your body language, leaning forward, furrow brow, smile, eyes, which is why we're all so crap when we're on Slack. It's 10% of our power in communicating. So So when our users are communicating with us right now, it's by click. They move their mouse and they tell us answers or they type in information. And we start to say, how can we get more data around what employees are telling us so we can better perceive stress, so we can better perceive confusion, so we can better understand the mindset to ultimately guide people towards better financial decisions in a trustworthy, automated way.
But aren't there, like, I'm thinking about a lot of call centers and insurance companies that can detect a level of either anxiety or anger. I think there's like some artificial intelligence that some of those companies use to escalate a call when it's getting out of hand. Are those techniques that, like, I could imagine a scenario where I'm getting really frustrated about my choices and I'm not understanding, or maybe I'm just having a bad day. And then maybe there's a series of interactions that calms me even further.
I am not familiar with those, but that sounds amazing. And I think training people on how to deal with those calls, it's just the mirroring and stuff. It's a super interesting behavioral science approach.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to the Second City, which works a lot with other businesses.
Those guys are great.
Yeah, and I imagine a lot of those techniques probably come into play in those scenarios.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
This month, NetSuite is offering a free 60-minute business review with an expert in your industry to identify opportunities to turbocharge your growth. To get your free review, go to netsuite.com/Steiner. That's netsuite.com/Steiner. netsuite.com/Steiner.
So when you started seeing technologies like Siri and Google Home and the Amazon Alexa, I mean the voice human interface paradigm obviously took off from a consumer standpoint. When was that? How did that coincide with your technology's growth? Was it helpful? Was it just a validator?
So the fact is, when we started doing interactive conversation design, people weren't sure that their computers wouldn't drop the dial-up and that the computer would hear them. And now we have babies born with smartphones in their hands. Yeah. To me, I think it's just a very interesting. It's everything old becomes new again. Like really, it's like Voice Genie. And remember, like we used to, before there was broadband web, before we imagined there would be fully broadband web, people were like, we'll navigate with voice. And now we're back to it because it's just hands-free and it's so pervasive and we're surfing and browsing and questioning all the time. I think it is exciting. I think it is accretive. I think that there are open APIs. Like, can Alex integrate with Alexa? We certainly hope so. I think these are very exciting times. I know what I'm supposed to say is I'm deeply worried about privacy. I know I'm supposed to say that, but I just, as a human being, don't lead an interesting enough life to really be worried. I mean, like Siri is like, you're boring. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I got shamed because I'm boring. But I do understand that like privacy matters and there should be a dialogue around privacy. But for me, I embrace all that stuff. I think it's great.
So what's the business model for this? I mean,
it's SaaS subscription. Employers pay us based on the number of benefit eligible employees, the kind of people we're going to be able to help.
And what are some of the other decision areas that you're maybe thinking about for the future?
So ultimately, what we want to be able to do is help people with their gross to net pay. Let me explain that in sort of English. We're a company that what we want to do at the end of the day when we lay our heads down on our pillow and think, did Jellyvision do a good job as a company? We want to be measured not in helping people pick benefits, but in helping Americans get better control of their financial well-being. We are very much interested in helping nudge people towards better financial decisions, and we started doing it by helping people save money on health insurance. Where we think about going, we'd love to be able to build software that puts budgeting tools in the palm of your hand. The problem is that now is more fun than later, and bacon cheeseburgers taste better than kale. And so we spend a lot of time saying, how can we actually get people to engage? How can we get people to wake up on a Tuesday in May and decide, now I'm going to take control of my financial well-being? And the reality is it's really, really hard to do. However, in our research, we noticed that when we talk to employees, particularly millennials, and say, do you know without looking, without checking, what you spend on average per month for your home? Everybody says yes. For your phone, everybody says yes. Clothes, entertainment, pretty much yes. But then we get into things like health insurance. No idea without looking. 401k, no idea without looking. Taxes. Do you know what your annual set aside, your monthly set aside for taxes is? No idea. And we realize there's this sort of black box where stuff happens to your money between the time you get your pay and before you get your paycheck. It just goes into this black box of like yuck, and you're not in control, and so you don't really worry about it. And that is where we think we can actually help people get into better financial well-being. So as you're paying your FICA tax, as you see all these weird things come out of your paycheck, can we get you to put $50 or $100 more into your 401k? Or HSA or emergency savings. So we talk about it as paycheck to piggy bank financial well-being, and that is exactly where we're trying to go to work with employers to help nudge employees towards a better financial perspective, more retirement readiness, less debt, more cash on hand for savings in case there are bumps in the road. And we think we can do it working with employers around navigating just a few more little bits of hygiene before you get that take-home pay.
We're increasingly more of a 1099 world. How do you help with that if it's,
Well, let's talk about it. Increasingly a 1099 world. So there has been a 5% increase in the gig economy talent pool since 1999. So 20 years, it went from 30 to 35%. There's not a tremendous shift in like gig workers. What's happening is that it's 30% increase in pay. So it's talented workers are becoming gig workers. But there are still going to be employers sponsoring benefits. There's still going to be corporations that help people with health insurance. I don't see us moving towards nationalized health care or an individual market. Employers are staying in the game. And as long as they're staying in the game of helping employees, we'll be there to help them explain what they're trying to do.
Right. It can be a little more complicated. If you're 1099, the tax implications are different. You have to set aside more money. You have to take care of it rather than your employer taking care of it, presumably.
Yes. And we really work with the employer marketplace when people are full-time employees.
Gotcha. So I want to end by talking a little bit more about Jellyvision as a company. You have you're hiring 100 people a year. So that's pretty remarkable. What do you see as the culture of Jellyvision, and how do you maintain that?
So I think Jellyvision's an employer of choice because we have employees of choice. We're just a company that knows where our bread is buttered. Some companies have, Six Sigma production processes, and others have like ideal algorithms. We just were, and always will be only as good as the people working on our software, building it, selling it, servicing it. And so we tend to take it very seriously. We have very, very selective hiring processes. We are getting better and better at parting ways graciously and generously with people who aren't a fit. And then what we really try to do is get these great people, trust that they'll use good judgment, give them very few policies, very few rules, and ask them to use their perspective and their brains to help make our business and products better.
So what kind of leader are you? I mean, you've won some awards as well, CEO of the Year, a couple of years in a row. What's your leadership style?
I like these questions. I'm like, these are the hard ones. Talk about anything but me. I'm like, I don't know.
That's why we saved him for last.
I'm like delightful. Am I a delightful leader? I definitely take the work seriously, but not myself. I definitely have very high standards and create long leashes, and I like to work with people who are autonomous and strong and independent. I am a leader that really cares about integrity. I'm not a growth at any cost leader. We do what's right because it's right and play the long game. I get excited about innovation. I get excited by people who try new things. And I ultimately care very much that above all else, we and our products are helpful.
And are you from Chicago?
I'm not. I grew up in Virginia.
Oh, okay. So how do you've been in Chicago? The company started in Chicago?
I met and married a Chicago guy in 1994. I moved out here. I'm never getting out. My kids are Midwestern. I'm never getting out. I'm stuck here.
How do you see the startup space in Chicago?
I see it as full of potential and really coming into being. There are more startups and more diverse startups right now getting capital, getting growth stage checks. It's a very exciting time. I think you have to kind of say, what are we good at? We're good at boring businesses that make money, right? And as long as we could just make revenue sexy instead of how much money did you raise, I think Chicago would be much more squarely on the map. But we have great marketplaces around things like parking and landscaping and just like giant marketplaces that are currently done by people on phones with paper that are going to be giant businesses, logistics, huge companies in place in logistics right now. So sort of like the infrastructure of business and the economy is being, I think, bolstered by startups in Chicago.
Great. Well, good luck and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's so refreshing to hear a leader focus entirely on integrity and helping people and coming up with innovations that do that. Clearly, Jellyvision meets all of those important qualities, and I want to thank so much our guest, Amanda Lannert from Jellyvision, for joining us on this episode of the GrowWire podcast. I also want to thank our editors over at Lampstand, our producer, Kendall Fisher. Thank you, Kendall.
Thanks for having me.
And all of you listeners for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Until next time. We're gonna get better at that. Bye. You just listened to the GrowWire podcast with host Fritz Nelson. Make sure to keep tuning in for more episodes full of tips, tools, stories, and strategies to help take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.